Hey, it's Phil. Before you're going to check out my Rants About Humanity episode, I also want to invite you to consider following me and subscribing on my podcast channels and my Rumble video player channel down below. You can find it in the description. With the increasing censorship and limitations of freedom of YouTube, I don't know how long I will be able to have my thought-provoking conversations on YouTube. So if you want to support me in my mission of freedom of speech, open debate, be sure to also check me out and follow me on those platforms. And enjoy this week's episode. Hey, it's Phil. Before you're going to check out my Rants About Humanity episode, I also want to invite you to consider following me and subscribing on my podcast channels and my Rumble video player channel down below. You can find it in the description. With the increasing censorship and limitations of freedom of YouTube, I don't know how long I will be able to have my thought-provoking conversations on YouTube. So if you want to support me in my mission of freedom of speech, open debate, be sure to also check me out and follow me on those platforms. And enjoy this week's episode. Welcome everyone to the Rants About Humanity podcast. Today I have Sam Lewis as a guest. Sam was born to parents with strong theosophical beliefs. His mother was a yoga master and energy healer, and father a longtime meditator and seeker of truth. He spent his 20s in the world of entrepreneurialism and built a multinational company which provided him all the luxuries of a Western life, only to realize chasing goals of a material nature is an insatiable hunger that will never be fed. Over the last 5 years, he had gone back to his roots and dived inwards for the answer to the age-old question, who am I? He now lives in Vanuatu. That's a country that I didn't even know of before. It's a small tropical island nation in the South Pacific where he runs meditations and manifestation retreats and online programs to help guide thousands of souls back to their true nature. Thanks so much for being a guest on the podcast. Let's drop the angel wings and speak our truth. What are some of these new age bullshit beliefs?
Oh, jeez. Well, thanks for having me firstly.
Yeah.
Okay. Look, I've just seen the new age world. Me growing up. I mean, that you read out my bio.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Background comes from. I grew up in the world where, mum was a yoga teacher, dad's been a meditator. So it's not so new age or trendy to me. It's sort of been this way. I've been a vegetarian my whole life and sort of grew up with a yogic philosophy. So now I suppose more so over the last 10 to 15 years, I've seen this new age movement really come into trend. And I've seen a lot of people jump on this bandwagon and just use it as consumerism. And I say it's consumerism wrapped in mala beads and a yellow robe, which is just a lot of shit. So I see a lot of people, go down the road, and yoga's a funny one. Yoga's, there's a yoga studio in every single corner, and you go in there and most people know nothing about yoga. I mean, there's, potentially has 8 limbs of yoga. One of them is the asanas. One of them is the practice. One of them is
which is like a very, very, very small percentage of the entire yoga.
Very small. Exactly. So it's very funny. Like I suppose identify myself as a yogi, but I don't practice a whole lot of asanas. But I do sit in meditation daily, and I do live through non-dualistic concepts. So it's very funny. And when people ask me, you're a yogi and stuff like that, they sort of ask me about yoga. I don't have a yogi's body or anything like that. It's very. You have
a Buddha's body, right? In Eastern. Asia Buddha body, right?
Yeah, the happy Buddha, the laughing Buddha. But yeah. So there's I just find a lot of people in the new age world are using this as as a way to consume things. Okay, and whether that be consumerism as the material, okay, or just to add information into their mind. Okay, so I see so many people out there adding more tools to the tool belt. And I find it to be, I suppose, for spiritual growth. And in my idea of spiritual growth, it's more about the devolution, okay, and the letting go of concepts, the letting go of identities, letting go of concepts, and the letting go of the small s self, the ego, if you like. Where opposed to, what I see out there in the new age world, it just seems like adding layers and layers and layers of bullshit on the ego, which, one day will have to be let go of, whether that's on your deathbed or, in the reincarnation process or whatever it may be. But I just see a lot of it going out there. and it deters us from the truth. It deters us from the fact of what it really is. I mean, this leads into a conversation that I know you're into, and it's what's happening in the world today. And what's happening in the world today, it does seem like there's this, I don't like to call it a battle, but there is this good and evil balance kind of going on. And the more that we put our mind towards consuming things and growing knowledge and creating identities around ourselves, the more we're getting away from the truth, and the more we're lowering our vibration, and it's not helping the evolution that needs to be.
And I sometimes see it mistaken, especially when we talk about what's going on in the world. I don't call it political correctness. I call it like spiritual correctness. There's kind of like interpreting acceptance also as this kind of conformity, and a kind of like letting go, and it happens. We let it happen. But I never saw spirituality as just like, yes, letting go and, releasing. But there's also discernment and standing for something and being in your core and standing up for life force, that is acceptance way, like it's not under my control, so I'm not going to do anything about it. I'm just with me. I'm part of source, that kind of has this complacency attitude with everything that's going on.
Yes, I mean, well, this is the idea of spiritual bypassing, isn't it? It's a sort of, a lot of people going in that. It's, from my experience with spirituality anyway, it takes commitment, and it does take you've got to have strong habits. And even in the meditation process, it's about having a single pointed mind. Okay. So, pointing your mind at one thing, which takes discipline. Okay. And then beyond that discipline, there's a breath of freedom. Okay. And I really, really worry that the New Age community and this whole idea of, I'm a free spirit and everything like this, it gets away from that. And people are not seeing what the sages and the monks have done for thousands and thousands of years.
This is the part that sometimes, I mean, maybe it's a kind of stage, but you saw that the Buddha was also first practicing discipline or pointing his mind or willpower. And what I noticed in a kind of yin and yang sense is that spirituality has very much been interpreted in a kind of feminine sense of like letting go, complete openness, total chaos, complete reception, but without any masculine pole, without any containment, discernment, discipline, focus. That can become blinding to only have that aspect in spirituality.
100%. And this is where we get the far left movement from. You know what I mean? This is where this comes about, is just this idea that we don't need to be in our masculine, and whether you call it masculine or feminine, yin yang, whatever it may be. But I think that's what you're saying. Discipline and discernment in your spiritual practice. It's an important thing. I mean, we're talking early in the morning here. Before I get up at 5 o'clock, I meditate, and I sit in meditation, even when I don't want to. But that sort of idea, and I've met a lot of spiritual people and running meditation courses. People are like, meditate when I feel like meditating, and and they have this approach towards it, which unfortunately, leads to being a little bit airy, being a little bit airy and fairy about it. And it doesn't get the results that that's desired.
Yeah, and I used to grow up in like hip hop, which is also very mostly like left wing, fight the system. The 60s left was mostly about speak your truth and equality, not equity. But nowadays it's very hard to be a yogi and you have some conservative policies or right wing policies. It almost seems like the political correctness and spiritual correctness has to be aligned. So you have to be completely left wing, else you're not spiritual. But I feel I can be spiritual, but I also value certain conservative elements, some right-wing elements, some left-wing elements, definitely. But there seems to be a taboo, especially in the left-wing environments, to be a bit more in the center, let alone be a bit more to the right.
Definitely. But I find we see that swinging, especially over the last couple of years. Okay, like I feel a lot more far left and moving to the center than far right moving to the center. I feel it shifting.
I think more of the left has gone so far out left that some people just move to the center because the left moves so much to the left.
Fair enough. Yes.
It's like you're pretty far left. It's like no, the left has moved so far ahead that I just completely moved towards the right center.
Yes. It's true, but look, the big thing with this is I think just people are just, you know, they're trading one identity for another, and this is what it is. You know, maybe their identity when they grew up was going out and partying and, you know, drinking or whatever it may be, or in my case it was entrepreneurialism and creating business and doing all this sort of stuff, and then the shift into spirituality. You've got to be careful that you don't wear this as a badge. Okay, and I think real spirituality is about losing that identity. Okay, and really losing that identity and seeing nature for what it is, and seeing the reality for what it is. And we're just, you know, we're just a player, an avatar in this reality, walking our way through life. The more we identify, the more we attach to that, the more life's problems hit us.
Yeah,
I'm
more of a Jungian that way, that I look at. I mean, this is a bit structured, more kind of my personality type. That you have like 3 elements in life, which is spirituality, which is more focused on the present and being one with the present. Self-development, which is more future-oriented, looking forward to something. And then something just has to do with the past, trauma, shadow work, psychology. And all those 3 things are important. But when one person presents that, oh, you only have to develop yourself, or you only have to work on your trauma, or you only have to meditate, I'm very weary, because I've been in spiritual environments that I think this dude could probably use some shadow work or some psychology or some self-development, multimillionaire. I would think like, okay, this dude should meditate a bit, you know, like it's not just one thing seems to be a solution. I think it's about integration of these things. And I also witnessed it in spiritual environments. This is also partly what spiritual bypassing is doing. You just bypass pain or psychology or wounds from the past and create a spiritual ego to then just bypass it and not, between brackets, have to go through the process.
100%. And this is this false spirituality. But I do challenge that, because, you know, my experience with it and where I go is, you know, I come from a school of non-duality, and a follower of 𝗏𝗏𝗕𝗏𝗏 Maharishi.
Yeah, okay, yeah. I read the book by David Gautam. Yeah.
Perfect. I mean, he was a strong follower of Sri Ramana.
Yeah.
And so I come from that. And the way I see it is I went down the personal development route, and I went and, you know, run personal development courses and men's work courses, and, you know, spoke on stage and did all that sort of stuff. But I realized what was happening there is if you have a look at it, if you have a look at the construct of nature, we've got what I call our small s self, which is our persona, our personality, our ego, if you like. And then you've got the true self, which is the big S self, which is the absolute God, if you like. Now, a lot of these things, and you talk about, you know, doing shadow work, you know, you talk about shadow work, dealing with the past, you talked about personal developments, you know, creating a future. And then you've got, you know, the meditation, which is present, and there's memes around this and stuff like that. But I find that, you know, every issue that we have in life, whether it be past traumas or our anxiety for what we want to create in the future through goals and everything like that, because goals do create anxiety. There is no two ifs about that. They're important if you want to get shit done, but they do create anxiety. But all this relates to your identity as a human being. All of it relates to your identity as a human being and how much you hold on to that identity as a human being. Okay. Now, if you were to just drop that identity as a human being and understand yourself as a true self, as a capital S self, as a spark of the divine, well, then all that disappears. You know, if you have a look at it, and without taking away the self-love and stuff like that, which is a whole nother conversation, but if you have a look at who you really are as a person and what your existence is, you are just a spark of the divine. And on this planet, let's be real, you're one of 8 billion people. Okay, so there's 8 billion souls on this planet. Plus, if you ever look into an animal's eyes, they've definitely got souls. And then if you're looking, you know, into other dimensions and extraterrestrial, there's a lot of bloody souls. There's a lot of souls out there. So you're a very, very small part of it. So to take that significance that you put on yourself away, which creates importance, which then has all these traumas attached to it, to let go of that and just abide as the self, as the true self, abide as a spark of God, then a lot of that falls away. And that's the theory that I work with.
When we talk about anxiety, I see it as the negative side of the medal, and the positive side of the medal is meaning. Because almost everything that we're anxious about, it has like meaning to us that we look forward to it. So I get the stance that you have. On the other hand, wouldn't you also, and this is your position towards like the personal ego and identity, if you would constantly be in this nirvana and place and with everything without anxiety, wouldn't your soul for expansion, or as Alan Watts would call it, the element of irreducible rascality, still want some dualism again and play with it and have some anxiety and some contrast?
I don't think your soul, I agree with you, but I don't think your soul. I don't think your soul seeks for that. I think, like, a lot of people talk about their soul's purpose. You know, this is a new age thing thrown around. I believe your soul's purpose, its only purpose is to return home, return back to source. Okay. The lower levels of the ego, definitely. But I do believe that the soul is part of the ego. And being a non-dualist and having Advaita principles, this explains it pretty clearly. Anything that Advaita draw a line down the middle, anything that is whole and complete is the absolute, is God. Okay. Anything that is individual or separate, okay, is part of the ego, part of the jiva.
I follow Moji, and I've also been to him, and he's like from the Sri Ramana Maharishi school. How can you ever not be the self?
You can't. Well, the big S self.
But you're not aware of it. You sabotage it. You cloak it. You put dust before it. Because if you're always the self and you're scooping back into the self, what's this whole play then of you having to discover yourself? Is it like being blindfolded? Or even then the blindfolds are fake? Do you get what I'm saying?
100%. And it's not so much that you're not the self, or you completely detach from it. You don't feed yourself, or you don't look after your hygiene or anything like that. It's not so much that, it's the attachment to it. And through my meditation practice, I find the attachment to it falls away. And it's not like a ayahuasca trip to the moon sort of thing. It's a very, very slow dripping off and a falling away of identity. And you stop giving a shit about stuff that you cared about before. Ramana says something really amazing, and it's actually, I talked to my dad a lot about this, and it's I'm still in a world where I've got a mortgage and I need to pay stuff and make money, and then slipping into meditation for a couple of hours a day. I'm just like, fuck it, I just go live on an island, or I do live on an island, or I'll go live on the hill and in a hut or whatever it may be. But Ramana says something, it's he says your hands can do the work, but your mind will remain still as it is. So it's not about not doing the work, or being a human, or having a wife and having a spouse, or having children, or going through the motions of life. It's about the attachment to it. How hard do we hang on to that? And when we see ourselves purely and solely as Philippe, as Sam, then there's a whole lot of human shit that comes with us. We can go, yes, this is what I'm doing. I'm in that skin suit, but I identify with me being a whole self, the big S self.
Do you make a distinction between detachment and non-attachment?
Basically giving a shit about it.
Because sometimes I make a distinction with, like, detachment is almost like distancing yourself from something. So even if you distance yourself from something, it still has a huge power over what you do. Even though it's maybe negative, I'm detaching, I'm going away. But then it's like non-attachment. I mean, you can still maybe value something, you want to play with something, but you're not so attached to the outcome. That's sometimes the difference that I make between detachment and non-attachment. Yeah,
it's like the alcoholic that can't go near the pub. You know what I mean? Like, has he really let go of that attachment? Yeah. Has he really let go of that habit if he can't be anywhere near alcohol? You know what I mean? So I think that's a process. Yeah, it definitely is a process, and there are levels to it. But for something like alcoholism or cigarettes or whatever it may be, or potentially a toxic relationship, the best thing to do is to get away from it. And I think it's a process over time where you can go, all right, like, if you're an alcoholic, maybe for the first 5 years you can't go near alcohol, you can't go to those parties, you can't do that. But 5 years later, once that's left your body, once that's left your idea of who you are, and this is about the work. Like, we attach so much to being an alcoholic or an ex-alcoholic, or someone with drug issues or whatever it may be, that we're attached to that. And this is where the identity comes in there. Okay, is you're attached to that identity. If you to let that identity go, well, then I think that's true unattachment, or that's true.
Yeah, sometimes you can look at it like this kind of bridge between what you're saying and call attachment and calling it an addiction, because you can be addicted to a drug, but you can also be addicted to a certain image or a certain identity. And what is an addiction? Like, you keep on using it despite negative consequences. You feel it has control over you, and
100%.
this is often a lot of tendencies that you see in, am I addicted to this pattern, to this idea, to this practice?
100%. I noticed this with with business, and I identified as an entrepreneur. I was the kid that fucked up at school and left school early, then got into the business world and overachieved in the business world, and sort of the uneducated kid that became an entrepreneur and made all this money. So that was my identity for so long, and I held on to it. And then over the last 5, 6, 7 years, that slowly dripped away. But I noticed it creeping back in. There's business opportunities. I actually had a dream last night about me having a business opportunity, and I woke up invigorated and excited. I thought, oh, this is great, and that may be something I pursue. But my work is, can I pursue that without attachment? Okay, can I pursue that? Because what happens here is, and this is from my experience, is the minute you have an attachment or a desire for something, okay, then you get attached to that and you hold on to that, and then the fear of loss comes into place. If I lose that, or like we've got this beautiful house in Vanuatu, we've got 12 hectares and it's, fully sustainable. We've got a veggie farm, all this stuff. I'm really, I'll be honest, I'm really attached to this. Mm-hmm. Okay. And now with COVID, my business has gone to shit. And, I'm finding out, for the first time in a long time, I've got money issues. And I'm like, what if I lose this? Okay. And then I think, well, without that there, okay, is this beautiful house, is this beautiful farm and everything that I wanted to create over the last 5 years and I've gone out and achieved, is this causing me more joy or more heartbreak and despair? Okay. And it's not the thing, it's just my attachment to it. It's just the fact that I'm attached to it. If I just let go of that. Yeah,
it reminds me of a story of, well, I'm going to butcher it, but I'm going to shortcut it, about a traveling company who was crossing the river, and there was like a woman, and she had like a super precious diamond which was worth a lot of money, and they asked her like, hey, please could you give it to me? And she gave it to the person, like, yeah, sure, you can have it. And then the guy was like, walking further, but then after half a day he came back, and then he gave back the thing that she gave to him, which was worth so much money. And it's like, you know what? I want you to give me another gift. And then she said, like, yeah, about gift, I would love for you to give me the element in you that allowed you to give me that gift. That's the power, right? That mindset that somebody would be able to give it and have that trust and then feel secure that way. No matter how much you can give, you have the trust in yourself and the universe. That's one of the most amazing gifts that you can have, and mindsets.
100. And for me, that's a beautiful story. For me, that's abundance. To be able to let go and understand that you will be looked after. And the energy of letting go is also the energy of receiving. It opens up someone to be able to receive.
Yeah, it's like that you give that trust, but then it's like, I trust enough that everything will be okay. And that's sometimes what I wanted to relate to what you say. Sometimes it's good to have, sometimes people say intention is too much tension, but sometimes to have a message to the universe, an intention, a desire you want to cultivate, but then you don't get clear on how you want it, or you're not attached to how it will manifest, or you have trust that it will appear, then suddenly it can also manifest or happen in a way that you don't expect it, but you're ready to receive it, but not in a grabbing way. You want it in a specific way with so much attachment to the result.
Well, what happens here is I've looked a lot into occult stuff, and gone down, Theosophical Society path and all this sort of stuff, and understand, how spiritual cities with spiritual powers work and how they work. And I've really directed mine towards manifestation. And this is a lot of stuff that I teach, and a lot of stuff that, The Secret and the whole manifestation crew out there. What they're trying to do is they're trying to manifest through the mind, okay, which is extremely powerful because, the first cosmic law is mind is all, okay. So they're trying to manifest through the mind. But the problem, and this goes back into my non-duality concepts, is they're manifesting through the small self. Now, the mind, Sam's mind, Philip's mind, it comes with a whole lot of fuckery. It comes with a whole lot of childhood trauma and past experiences and money stories and whatever it may be. So they're manifesting from a very, very limited reality. Okay. Now you throw surrender into the mix. So you have an intention. You take your intention from the mind into a vibration, okay, into an energy field. You let that out into the universe, and then you surrender it. Okay, you completely surrender that and give it up to God, give it up to the absolute. You go from what is limited possibilities, which is the limits of the mind and our very limited minds as humans, you go into something that is completely infinite.
It's like a message in a bottle in the ocean of consciousness. Yeah,
that's very much so. Very much so. I mean, you can only manifest what your mind can perceive. Okay, and your mind can only perceive from previous experiences. Yeah, so when I use manifestation, I work with the 5 senses. So not just to visualize now, because visualizing it is just 20% of it. So you go through all the different 5 senses, you feel it, you touch it, you smell it, okay? And you go through all these 5 senses and you create a very strong and clear image of it. Okay. And from there, you detach yourself from what exactly it is. And you just understand that you're not trying to create this. Like, this is the thing. You may have a goal to, let's just use something very material, to buy a Ferrari. Okay. Because you think when you jump in your Ferrari and you press the start button and it makes all the noises, that's going to make you feel fantastic. It's not actually the Ferrari you want. You just want that feeling. Yeah. You just want that emotion. So to take it from an idea into an emotion, okay, and then from an emotion into a vibration, now you're talking the language of the universe. Now, to let that out there, that vibration, and then just detach from it and surrender and just say, okay, I don't mind if it's a Ferrari. I don't mind if it's this or that. It could be a child into my life. It could be whatever it may be. But this feeling that I have in my heart now, this feeling that's vibrating through my whole body, this is what I'd like to create in my life. And God, if you like, absolutely all, put it out there, and whatever comes to me will come to me. And then it's about staying in that vibration. And this is where I find manifestation to be really, really powerful. Now, what the saints and Maharajis and stuff like that around the world did when they were doing instant manifestation is they're just at a point now. And I don't want to get into the whole dimension thing. It's we're not talking New Age, but they're at a point now where they dissolve time. Okay, so if you like, they're in the 4th dimension because they just dissolve the idea of time. So they understand that the mind is all. They can create this through the process that I just did. And then the next thing, their mind is so strong, is they just dissolve the idea of time. So things become instant.
This is the thing that I see with everything right now through the SCAM, massive SCAM at the moment. These, and I'm curious about your experience with the occult or the negative or the evil. They use one part of the mind, which is perception. And they realize when you can hijack perception, perception becomes reality. And when you can manipulate the goggles of reality, people will think like my reality determines my perception. No, it's the other way around. And they still will claim it's their reality and their perception, even though their perception is hijacked. And then they get proof of what they're looking for, but they have a very limited view of reality and how frequency, vibration, the universe works.
Definitely. And this is the magic in it. This is the dark magic of what they're doing. And they're putting people, and do you know who the worst culprits are? Is the New Age world. The people that sit there, and I've been caught in it. Let's be honest, we've probably all been caught in it, sitting there and looking at all the conspiracies and looking at all the different things online and believing Trump's our savior and all the things that happens, and this is just getting us in a certain state. But 100%, this is the trap. It's about controlling the perception, okay, which is then creating this reality that they want.
Yeah, this is on an individual level what you say, the spiritual bypassing, but on a societal level, it's definitely massive spiritual bypassing or gaslighting. Because we look at conspiracies that happened within certain milieus or certain industries. But I don't think the spiritual industry is devoid from being like infiltrated by certain narratives that actually make spirituality weaker or don't serve humanity. But it's a topic that not a lot of people talk about certain spiritual beliefs that are put there in purpose to weaken spirituality or weaken humanity.
Oh, the spiritual community is right for it, because the one thing for magic to work and to work effectively is you need to believe it. So you've got a whole spiritual community that do believe in magic and do believe in this sort of stuff, and they're putting all their attention and all their thought into this, okay? And they're not understanding the ramifications, or they're not understanding the energy that they're putting in is a self-fulfilling prophecy. And it's very hard not to get caught up in this. I mean, I would be looking through YouTube and something comes up and I'll listen to that. And
you mean find the thing that people say, like, whatever you resist persists, and you're reality becomes what you most pay attention to. And if everything that you pay attention to is the enemy, you become the enemy.
Definitely. If that's where your mind's going, if wherever your mind's going, and so I subscribe into, to put it simpler, that all is mind. I don't subscribe into, just recently, to be honest, I've come to a realization through meditation, and it was, to be honest, I was in meditation and my mind led me to, the fuckery of the world at the moment. Okay. And what's happening with the C-bomb and all that sort of stuff. My mind led me to that. And it was a really, really sort of divine experience, which led into, to be honest, afterwards I was in this state of, samadhi, if you like, but I was in this bliss state afterwards.
Samadhi, better know us. I don't give a fuck.
Pretty much. I was in this bliss state afterwards, but the realization it came to was there is no collective reality. There is no collective consciousness. Okay. Everything that I perceive is what it is. Coming down to this conversation, the words coming from your mouth and the way I perceive them and the way I perceive your energy through the words is got to do with my human condition, and vice versa. It's a very interesting way to look at it and a very interesting way to think. But that was a certain experience to me. So before,
how do you not end up in that perspective from just saying like, whatever happens, I'll be fine, I trust the universe, and just ignoring between brackets reality, or doing something in reality and just focusing on your small self S and the big self S?
How do you do that? I think it's, it's be careful how attached you are, because it all comes down to this attachment.
Because that's the balance a bit. Like, I'm not looking for a black and white response, but you could say like, hey, I'm gonna meditate. I'm focused on myself. I'm gonna, let go of attachment. I'm gonna become a better person, spiritual being. I'm gonna be present. That's fine. But what? And I'm just challenging your ideas here. What if all these rights are being challenged, and children are being pressured, and their freedoms are taken away, and the totalitarianism almost knocks at your doorstep? How do you keep the balance then of realizing I'm the big self, I'm going to meditate, and still in the real world taking a stand or drawing boundaries there?
There's no answers to that. I think it's through practice and discipline. How do you do that? I do believe, I do believe there's more importance than sitting there in meditation and bringing a high vibration into the world. Okay, then there is standing on the picket line and yelling at people, because anybody can, and all you're doing with that, and all you're doing with, writing Facebook posts about this or whatever it may be is, fighting the injustices of the world. All you're doing with that is you're fighting fire with fire, and you're fighting it with the energy that it actually needs to survive. Opposed to sitting there in a high vibration and surrendering and trusting. I believe that has a lot more benefit to the world. How do you do that? It's hard work. It is hard work. And this is the trap of society. There's so much social media and so much bullshit that you can delve into, and so many rabbit holes. I put a post out. It was quite funny. I put a post out the other day. It's like one of those Confucius wise man says, if you dive down rabbit holes, you're going to find rabbit shit. I just thought that's fucking brilliant, because it's true.
And it's still, I also don't have a question to it. Because we're so global in everything that we do, so dependent on technology, institutions that are ownership on an individual level, societal level, nature level is so little percentage that it's even like difficult to just say, hey, I'm going to build alternative communities. I also have a big issue. If I wouldn't need to be on Facebook for my business and to create rebels with a cause, I wouldn't be on it. So there's is a kind of hypocritical thing about it, I'm shouting about how bad totalitarianism is on totalitarian platforms who are pushing totalitarianism and are feeding off my attention, which I'm again giving to them, that kind of conversation. On the other hand, you still want to have a means to survive and wake people up online, because if you're going to be angry, mad, and not being self-sufficient, how long will you last? So I don't also have any easy answers, but I feel a kind of, and maybe that's just my environment, a kind of fatigue with the role of technology in our life, the role of social media in our life. And I don't know if that's just a naive generation of me, but I kind of feel like I'm less excited about technology, not excited about the metaverse, the excitement about Facebook updates, new apps. It's been proven that it doesn't make me happier. So to believe again that this new Facebook will bring the end, or this 57 booster will bring the end, like I'm kind of realistic and I'm open to something new or rescuing something from the past.
Yes. Look, to speak into what you first said there, like I watched your YouTube channel and I had a look at this before I jumped on your show, and I think the way you're doing it's great. You're not doom and gloom. You're coming at it with a certain humility, and a certain humor behind it, which is the energy that it needs. You know what I mean? To sit here and go doom and gloom and really go, and really you're matching the energy that it needs, but to put some humor behind it and wear funny hats and do all that sort of stuff.
You wear a funny hat, man. Appreciate you, bro.
I wore it for you.
I mean, this is one of the. I don't know if it, on a kind of evolution level, I started by being angry and then having a lot of, resentment / grief towards what's happening. But now, like, I still feel mad and anxious, but I gotta tell you, man, I feel less anxious than a year ago because sometimes I just laughing my ass off. It's so ludicrous. It's such a circus, and I've been putting so much energy in it that I'm like sick of myself for putting so much energy and focus on it. But yeah, I'm laughing now more than a year ago. It's so ridiculous. Yeah. Like when you look at it from an intellectual level or a value, like the kind of person you are, you also have different levels of people, value level, feeling people who are more with reasoning, logic, or also people who are more intuitive or in touch with their body. All these people, you gotta feel that something is off here, right? We tried it for a year and a half. Where did it get us? Like, I gave you enough time. You gotta feel somewhere in your senses, your mind, your body, your heart. You gotta feel that something is off. I mean, that's what I feel.
This goes down there, but the people that are not switching on now, it's not about being woke or anything, but the people are not asking questions now. I doubt that they're fully human, to be honest. I truly doubt that they're fully human.
But I don't understand this. If I put myself in the perspective of the perception of people who are not vaselinated, why would you do that? When you have so much pressure on you and so much privilege is taken away, so much because we're assholes, because we're just psychopaths, because we just like to be difficult and say no. Like, why? Why will we want to, like, what is your argument that we willingly take this stance with so much pushback? You think we do this for fun or don't have any law? We've been brainwashed ourselves by the alternative media then.
100%. 100%. And I noticed, like, look, me living in Vanuatu, which is a small island nation in the South Pacific, we're 2 years behind everything, right? They've got the thing here, and but the church is pushing back. There's a few large churches here that are naming it the mark of the beast and all this sort of stuff. And for the first time, I've considered joining organized religion, not for the belief structure, but just for the fact that I feel they're going in the right path and going down the right path with it. But we haven't had COVID here. Okay, we're one of, I think, 3 countries in the world that hasn't. There's no face mask. There's nothing like that. There's none of this stuff happening. So it's a huge. I just said the word. Sorry.
But hey, Sam, let's be honest. Vanuatu, it must have been full of coughing people with respiratory illnesses there the last decades, right? Because where you live, that is super prevalent that people are sneezing and coughing all the time, right?
Exactly. We've got issues here where people still die of staph. So to think that that a flu is going to come in here and cause a trouble. We had a few people in the local village die of staph, and it's the fact that it's a macho thing. They don't want to go to the doctor or hospital, and they actually don't want to go get any sort of penicillin or something like that. They're scared of that, so they'll just use a leaf or something like that. So that's their answer to everything. Oh, there's a leaf. Grandma will give me a leaf, and they get a leaf and they drink the leaf tea and put the leaf on, and it fixes a lot of problems. But living in a developing country, and I suppose a lot of people are going through this living in a developing country, there are so much bigger issues here. Now, we're not hungry here. Vanuatu is a tropical country, so there's all sorts of abundance of fruit and fresh water and stuff like that. But it is a developing country and people are poor. People have got bigger issues than to worry about a fucking flu. And they're going to have trouble, sort of installing any sort of, anything into society here, because you've got to have something to take away from people. This is the thing. It's like they're very successful in the Western world because they can take away your freedoms and your idea of what it is to be living.
Yeah, I saw a video recently by someone on YouTube, and he said, like, I'm not advocating fleeing because I think you can't escape this, but like if you want to flee, you have to go to a poor country because they can't sustain totalitarianism. Totalitarianism can only be there silently when there is no totalitarianism. I still have my Wi-Fi and the supermarket is open and the government is giving me benefits. So yeah, no more survival brain, except the media is putting me in a survival brain. But I have comfort and I have more than enough food. So happy, dappy, dappy, snappy, dappy. Everything is fine.
and it's a beautiful way. Like, this is the thing. I just like last week I couldn't move. We scheduled for last week and I couldn't be on the call. I was traveling back I went up north and I took my gardener. He left when he was 18. He's now 50. He left his little village. Okay. And I went up there, and the village consists of his father, 75 years old or 74 years old. His father's got 7 kids. They've got their husbands and wives, and then their kids. And there's 40 of them.
7 kids that they know of.
Yeah, potentially. It's quite liberal around here when it comes to that. But
Polynese, isn't it? Polynese is also close to polygamy. Sorry to interrupt you, man. Yeah.
That's okay. Like, but what can they do? The men there, they fish and they get lobster and they eat, and then they play games. They play cards. There's no TV. There's very little internet reception. They're not on Facebook all the time. Most of them still don't have smartphones. Most of them still just got touch, button phones. But they're unbelievably happy men. And, they were talking to me about, if I can help them and support them financially. I kept saying to them, you're the rich man, not me. You're the rich man, and you look how beautiful. And you see this man at the top, the old man, and he can look down and on this village. It's a beautiful village, flowers everywhere, beautiful turtles swimming in the water, like absolutely the most stunning place ever. And he can look down and say, these are my kids and this is my generation. This is what I've created. And I think we need to get back to that. I really, really do. I think that's humanity. And that's really, and to have a look at this guy, and he was just a beautiful, 75-year-old man. He was just so clear and so happy and didn't have a worry in the world and healthy and fit and just a beautiful way to live. And he's got this village that he created.
I don't know if that's the name of the book also in English, but you have a book which is called Bullshit Jobs. And I don't know how much percentages was like bullshit jobs, like jobs that are not even necessary, or people have no idea what the hell impact that job is making. And you have a lot of jobs where what you do, you feel no impact. It has no relevance. You don't know who it affects, but you just feel as in this Kafka kind of library, just going from door to door and then just doing your thing and getting paid. And a lot of jobs right now are these unfulfilling, unmeaningful bullshit jobs.
Most of it. Because what is it essentially doing? You try to find a job in the Western world that's not feeding into the current agenda. Everything's about consumerism.
How did you woke up to the dark side of social engineering, the hidden agenda, and those things that's going on? Did it start with Zeitgeist or something, or other movies? That was one of the things that made me think. I don't know if you know that movie from back in the days.
Yeah, look, as I say, I was brought up with parents with strong philosophical beliefs, so they've been this way forever, and sort of I was taught this from a very young age, not the conspiracy side of kind of stuff, but just to not trust in society and not follow the path that that's went down there. Like when I left school when I was 15, and my parents were grateful. They said, "Oh, well done, school wasn't for you." And there wasn't this conversation around that. Okay, now go out there, get a job and find out what's for you. You know what I mean? And that was the way I was brought up. So it's, for me, there was no sort of awakening or, something that I watched that said, oh, this. It's all added to it. I mean, watching Zeitgeist, and that came out, probably 15 years ago now. That sort of, it all adds to it and stuff like that. But there's just been I suppose ever since I was a kid, there's been a distrust in authority.
Yeah, that's the common denominator of the people who still have their marbles, common sense. is people who challenge authority or thought for themselves, who were like rebels in the past and not condoned non-conformists. A lot of people seem to have issue also in the spiritual community that evil exists. If you see it as a place, if you see it as a mindset, if you see it something in people, a lot of people have difficulty believing evil exists. They want to reach spirituality, be good, be more forgiving, more self-love. But when it comes to the potential for evil, yeah, they like to see it in movies and read about it, and it's very exciting. But it seems also that a large part of the population doesn't realize the potential of evil or that it can exist.
100%. And I think you've got to define conversations that you have. You know, are you having a relative conversation? Are you speaking in this world, or are you having an absolute conversation? And from my standpoint, what I said, the 𝗦𝗫𝗸𝗸 principle there, you know, from an absolute standpoint, no, there is no evil. There's light, and then there's the absence of light. There's not light and dark. There's not hot and cold. Okay. There's just, with light, there's light. Okay. And there's an absence of it. But in the reality, in the relative world, in the perceived world, 100%. There very much is, you know, good and dark forces. There very much is, you know, things. And I think, you know, this is spiritual bypassing 101. We need to really have a look at this and go, yeah. Like,
about everything that's going on, I can't, like, people say it doesn't make any sense, we should do this, and they keep on being bought into the narrative and the measures. But then I say, like, this doesn't make sense, this doesn't make any sense. Like, listen, if you zoom out, and I'm going to tell you something that does make sense, and that these moves then suddenly make sense, and you see the path forward for some people, look at the players, look at the history, look at the gradual progression, it will start to make sense. But a lot of people don't. They think everybody has to be involved, everybody has to be in. It doesn't. I think the main signs for me of the devil, between brackets, is lies, manipulation, and deceit. And when you can use lies, manipulation, and deceit, you can cloak people their perception, and you can play on certain important aspects of human behavior or the human ego experience people have. But that's the rabbit hole with the rabbit shit that we talked about before. And a lot of people, they don't want to be open to that reality that some people would go to amazing lengths to make certain things happen. But even when you read the Bible or read Hinduism or other stories, there's always a role of evil there. There's always a role of people who wanting more power and control. So it is there in scriptures, but it seems that most people don't want to be open to that possibility that people could go that length, which says a lot about the heart of the people, that they could never go that length. And then it goes back to what I said, like the greatest trick the devil has ever told people is telling the world that he doesn't exist, you know, or that mindset doesn't exist.
It's, you know, for me, it's the mockery at the moment, and this is what they call it the devil or whatever. But the forces that are pulling the strings at the moment are not light forces, and it's the mockery. They're laughing, and they're getting off on this. Okay, this is, you know, this mockery of the world at the moment is what they're getting off in. And I mean,
you right now you read this, that you have certain side effects of the. And then you read now the new variant, the side effects of that. It's the same as that one. I'm reading that like, are you kidding me? These are the negative effects of this. And now there's a new variant. And these are the things that, you know, you list. Like, my God, it's so open and so blatant. This is what I mean, like almost laughing in our face.
They made a movie about this, the new variant, okay, in 1963. Okay, and it was all about the devil working with the government to control society.
Really?
It's complete and utter mockery. Look it up. Microsoft also had a video game on the PC. So they had a video game came out in 1999 with the same concepts. You know, it's the government and then the deception that the government play working with the devil to control society. And there's these two things. Okay, and then I don't want to get into numerology. One was in 1963, one was in 1999. And the mockery of this and the way
no, get into numerology for a sec. Now you tease my listeners. Now you just have to this, man.
I don't know a lot, but it's basically it's inverted. It's inverted 6 6s. Okay, so it's inverted 6. So, but for them to put it out in these years, and then for them to just put it out so basic and simply, and the fact I don't know, and I'm sure information will come out about the movie in 1963 and what happened with that. But the fact that this came out by Microsoft, Okay, and it happened to be Microsoft, Bill Gates' company, that put this game out and called it Omni. Okay, or the new variant, called it this. And the movie 1963 was actually called Omni Variant. So
really,
actually called that. Actually called it. Anyway. I saw this pop up. So but this is the devil's trick, and this is what they're getting off on. And we can talk about the drinking of baby blood and that sort of stuff.
It's what Hitler said, like, make a lie big enough and nobody will believe it's a lie. And that is often what they do. Or what's the best way to hide something? In plain sight.
Exactly. And how do we? I mean, this is the thing. I mean, we go into, it's like, I'm starting to question and just keep in mind, well, was Hitler a bad dude? What was he trying to do? And it's like, it opens up so many questions at the moment.
I already went past this whole rabbit hole. I talked about it in several podcasts. You can look at The Greatest Story Never Told or other movies about it to just show another perspective. Not saying the perspective, I'm saying another perspective. And then you can look at it as Hitler fighting the world system and looking at the whole context in which it was created. You will see a lot of resemblances with the situation that we have right now. I'm not condoning what he did it. Absolutely not. Is with the view that we see of all the conflict and his thing one-sided. 100% been hijacked completely with no nuance about it. And that always makes me weary. I am not advocating for one principle, but when I see one side not being talked about, I want to advocate that people hear that perspective so they can make up their own minds. That's why I'm advocating more for certain topics on this podcast, because they're not discussed enough. If it would be flipped another way, and I think it would be reasonable, I would just have the other side on, no problem. I mean, that's what my mission is.
Yeah, and that's where I'm at now. To believe one thing or to go down one path, and especially when we're talking about what's happening in the world at the moment, it's just ignorant. You've got to question everything. You actually don't even need to make a decision. You don't even need to choose a side.
When you look at Hitler, besides the one thing that he did, he was fighting the financial system and the financial system, and he was fighting mostly communism. And what we see right now in the world is the financial system is completely bankrupt. They're just printing magic money, inflation skyrocketing. They're going to develop bank currencies, to take over, link it with a social credit score so they have more control, and everything is on a social credit, and you're like on prohibition as a prisoner, let's say, with all these provisional freedoms that you have. And we live a kind of left authoritarianism, left communism, dipped in a sustainable development goals, identity politics sauce to make it sound nice. But then it's like, let me take control of the food supply. Let me take control of the nuclear family. Let me take control of education, and then on the reverse, you're like, it's good for you. Mommy knows best. This is the age that we live in right now.
100%. And that's like, it's funny now. All my efforts over the last year have been going in creating sustainability, and sustainability with food and water. And, we've got solar and all that sort of stuff, but, sustainability. And I think this is going to be the real, commodity. The petrodollar, when the petrodollar completely fucks out, which is close to doing, okay, then it's going to have issues. Australia is already having issues with supply chains. Okay, they're running out of diesel fuel, and Australia being such a large country, they use trucks to take.
But then it's not a problem, Sam. Then you can get a universal basic income as long as you fulfill all the obligation of the government. # social credit score.
Exactly, and people are buying into it. I was stuck in Australia. It's quite funny. I was stuck in Australia, and I never thought when COVID happened, I was in New Zealand, in my business in New Zealand, and I wanted to get home back to Vanuatu, couldn't get home back to Vanuatu. I'm on an Australian passport, so I flew quickly to Australia, stayed with my brother in the Gold Coast, which was great because we surfed it out. The beaches were open, so we surfed, which was great. But I was there for 6 months. And I got on the government benefits, but the ease that I did this was just phenomenal, because usually it's hard. So they're just throwing this money at it and getting so many people relying on this government benefit. And you can see what's happening with it. It's just, it's giving them a little bit and feeding them, getting them to rely on this. And the government benefits were big. I was making, Australian dollars, I think it was about $800 a week, which was more than enough for me to be able to live on. Okay. And they'd given me this, and then, and now they're putting in all the restrictions, to get government benefits. It's been in Australia for a while to get to get child assistance for your child, if you're a single mother or a single father, to get assistance for your child, they must be fully vaccinated with all the other, with all the penicillin and all the other vaccinations that they get. But that's been in Australia for a long time. Now, you can see this is coming in very, very quickly, that all these people now who have lost their jobs through lockdowns, okay, there's an extra, I think, 60% of people in Australia are on government benefits. Now it's very clear what's going to come in. You must have it. You must have this. You must have your passport.
More people dependent on the government. More people can play their strings, and the government is mostly dependent on the big pharma, big finance, big media, whatever, who say like, hey, do this, governments. And that way you can control the citizens and just play with their perception to make them look another way, keep on accumulating money at the top. And then we can have more power and influence to do whatever the fuck we want. And if people still resist in real life, let's move them towards the metaverse so we can have all their data and track them there online. And we have even more of their real life assets and their digital assets.
100%. And people, it's funny, I've talked to people about this, and it's like, the depopulation through this one. Mm-hmm. And people say, well, why would they want to depopulate? Why would they want to depopulate?
Because they don't need people anymore. You gave away all your money, your rights, your attention. You're basically just cattle, and you're useless death weight right now.
Yeah. And I don't think it's about money. I think one thing supersedes money, and that's power. Okay. And this is the devil's work. This is the mark of the beast. And it's why do you need, the only reason you need money is to gain power. And when you can get past that and you've got ultimate power, this is what they're getting the kickoff. And I don't think a lot of society is seeing that, because a lot of people who are sitting on the fence of this, of getting this one or not, they don't understand the idea behind that. They think, well, if they depopulate the world, well, then a lot of money and a lot of revenue is lost. Yes, but it's not about money and revenue. It goes past this. These people are fucking sicker than.
Also,
this
is also what I believe, and make up your own mind when you listen to this. The people who survived this crisis, they had so much savings that they can survive it. So they let all the middle businesses, the little businesses bleed, and they just buy up all the property and they just ride it out. That's also why you see companies like Uber surviving when you've been in debt for so many years, but just keep on sponsoring them until there's no competition. And then you can divide the pie, and who cares about 2-3 bad years if then you have a monopoly and you have even more power. That's peanuts for a long-term view.
100%. But it really depends how much of the population they're going to cull. If they cull 20% of the population, then that in theory works. If they go and kill 90% of it, it's a big difference. Okay, but I truly believe it's the power that they're chasing. I don't think they give a fuck about the money.
When you look at evil, what is evil? Evil is wanting to be godlike, but that's maybe more in the believe in the God tradition. It's two things. It's defining right and wrong and becoming immortal. What are these people obsessed with? Transhumanism, becoming immortal, and then defining what's right or wrong. And they're going to determine, do you stay in line or not? Can you have this freedom or not? Technology will determine it. Transhuman, technocracy, and that's how we rule the world. But what do you have to give up to get all that power? Faustian deal, your soul, your humanity. And what in the end makes you feel alive, not like, oh, my life was so good because I became old, or I told another person what to do. That's from power. That's from manipulation, power over someone. And that's also what you see in these people. Physically, they look less and less alive, less and less human, more and more degraded, because they sacrifice their humanity to become like God, and they just sacrifice their human fulfillment meaning.
And even people that have gone and got the double, they're grey. There's no other way to put it. There's a greyness to their aura. Okay, and I've spoke to so many people about this, and I'm not clairsentient or clairvoyant or any way like that, but you can perceive energy. It's a grey energy. There's just a nothingness about it. It's a very monotone. So the spark's gone. Which is very, very concerning, because God knows, only God knows, I suppose, what's. But
what I found fascinating from your background, right? Like, okay, maybe sometimes you can be a conformist in non-conformity, right? That's why all the yoga people wear the same, or all the God people, they wear the same, even though they call themselves non-conformist. But I had this talk also before. I just can't understand, but maybe that's just my, incarnated form personality, INTJ. How can you be a yoga teacher all about prana, the life force, the healing power of your body, let go and stretching, and then you just condone with putting there and just letting them tell you what to do with your body, mess with your frequency, less with your connection with people, determine if you can hug people, if you can connect with people, that would be such a disconnect for me as a light worker or a body worker.
Yeah, because you can now get your yoga teacher's certification online. And I'm not saying there's huge amounts wrong with that, but it's a cereal box at McDonald's, a fast food culture. I remember watching my mum do her yoga master. Like she did a yoga teacher, then she did a yoga. But my mum can speak fucking Sanskrit. You know what I mean? And it's like, this is what you had to do 30 years ago.
Omni padme motherfuckers.
Yeah. Now you go to Bali for 3 weeks, you come back and you're a yoga teacher. And away you go. So everything's dulled down. And I see, as something you said before, Ray, saying, I see a lot of people in this new age community getting into, cryptocurrency, which has its things. And I've got some of that stuff. But NFTs, now the new thing's NFTs. And I just think, what the fuck?
The concept of it, right? The concept of it, like it's just an element of valuing online life more than real life. And I saw someone really making the comparison, like we value likes online more than being liked by people in real life. We spend more time on online platforms than in real life. We value what we buy more online than in real. See this movement constantly of valuing things more online and moving more of our attention towards that and valuing that as being successful.
Like, why do you want to go make NFTs and buy NFTs? So the digital assets, so they can plug it into the metaverse. Like, exactly. Can you not see that this is adding to the fucking problem? And then they're calling themselves conscious. And so some people I've seen out there are calling themselves, adepts and wizards. And I'm like, no, please. And it's just, creating spiritual NFTs. I'm like, fuck, you're missing it. You're absolutely missing it. But this is they're out there. They're out there. You can buy spiritual symbols and geometry as NFT artworks, and it's just and just to think that this is the problem, and this comes back to our original conversation, and it's essentially people take on spiritualism as consumerism, and it's just another thing. Is it their fault? No, because we've been conditioned for so long and the whole way through life to consume and to have this way of thinking and to think that the short's faster. And this comes up with me with thinking about plant medicine, and I think I enjoy plant medicine. I enjoy plant medicine, but I know so many people that take a lot of plant medicine, go sit in the tent and go to the TP thing and do that a lot, but they're just not in connect with themselves, because the problem is they keep dropping themselves on the top of Mount Everest with a helicopter and then free falling back down. They haven't walked the walk. They haven't done the journey. They haven't learned how to climb the mountain. But so many people, you talk to so many people at the moment, and everybody wants this, and this is what ayahuasca is. I think it's that spiritual experience. It's that conversation with God from McDonald's. It's very interesting. Breathwork's another one.
It's a conversation with God at the drive-in.
Yeah. Pretty much. And look, it has its merits. It has its merits for some people. And don't get me wrong. And I think it is great and done in the right context. I've been in some unbelievable circles with people and had some beautiful spaces and had beautiful experiences doing this. But it doesn't integrate. And people talk about it doesn't integrate like spending time, I'm putting out my meditation cushion, but spending time on your meditation every single day, or spending it in strict spiritual practice, because that takes discipline, it takes time, it takes years. And this is what we need, rather than going out and chasing the Happy Meal at McDonald's.
You know what? I also did post recently that I don't understand why spiritual people use the term "I got a download," while download is such a technocratic language. Like, why would you use the word download to get like a spiritual message from the universe? I don't associate technology with spirituality.
Not at all. Not at all. But I mean, look, is that not a psyop or part of the conditioning as well? And it's funny. I've got a lot of friends that are into breath work. And it's funny to me, growing up with yogis, parents who are yogis, and pranayama or breath work it's part of it. Mm-hmm. But how they do breath work now, I'm just like, oh my God, Because the reason you sit in meditation is you sit upright with an erect spine and your legs crossed is because you want the energy to flow up and around you, okay? And you want the energy to leave your body, because it can actually be quite dangerous if it doesn't. But in breath work, they're all lying down on the grounds. And what they're doing is they're creating this energy, this prana in their body, okay? They're activating this energy, chi energy in their body. And it's just fucking pinging around their body like a ping pong ball. And they get this experience from it. And it's sensational, opposed to doing, you know, a yogic style breath work where it's sitting up straight with an erect spine, and it's doing the process properly and letting the energy flow in a certain way. Like I've been in spaces where, you know, we've got the energy working through meditation in a certain way, where someone's had a blockage somewhere up the energy system, and what happens is it shoots back down, and it shoots back down into their base, and it basically feels like their bum's on fire. And it's I've never experienced it, but people I've spoken to, it's an excruciating pain. And people don't understand the responsibilities when it comes to working with this. But it's quite funny. This is the way the new
I think
age
maybe
is
it's I mean, for me also, I'm more of a restless soul, or identify myself more with the incoordinated form that is this. I mean, you can have so spiritual fluff in the end that you don't know even if you can use the word I, you know, and you say am, and then, you know, that's like so many semantics or whatever. But sometimes there's also a journey. I don't know if you believe in past lives or playing this role in life. I can understand that sometimes mantra singing, kundalini, breath work, the ecstatic dance, dynamic meditation, sometimes it can be a middle stage to just move the body, feel the body, play with energy, you know, and then you find it maybe too hard. I mean, also speaking for myself, too hard to just sit down and watch your breath. I mean, I try it, but sometimes moving the body, being present, expressing yourself, and doing these kind of practices, for some people, maybe it can be an intermediary stage or already something that channels it in a more constructive form than not working with it. Or would you advise everyone like, no, just stick to it, sit down and meditate?
As long as you don't get stuck there. Like the one thing that came to my mind then is you said, oh, it's too hard to just be still. Now, what's wrong with hard? What's on the other side of hard? What's on the other side of difficult or suffering, if you like? Because sometimes to sit on the cushion for an hour or 2 hours, it's hard work. Sometimes you suffer. You know what I mean? But what's on the other side of that? And this is the growth. This is the growth. And
do you think this aspect, sometimes you can look at it as like just Rap said, oh, I do 5 minutes biceps, 10 minutes biceps, 15 minutes biceps. Every personality is, of course, different. But would you advocate of having someone dedicate to at least the minimum amount of time, just like some meditation form? Or do you think for some people it's good like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 50 minutes, and expand the length that you do it? Or is it like letting the dust settle in a muddy glass and you need to do it for a period and just stick to it and commit to it, else you will dabble too much? You get my question?
Yeah. And it depends what you want, what you're trying to achieve. If you do want to ascend somewhat spiritually, from my experience, it takes at least 40 minutes to get into it. You know, I mean, the first 40 minutes of meditation is preparation. And then if I meditate for an hour and 20, and then I get the juice at the end of it. But there's a Buddhist, or I think it's a Zen proverb, you know, if you have trouble sitting for 20 minutes, you need to sit for an hour. You know, it's like that's the answer to it. And I think there is something in that and learning it. And you know what is hard today will become normal very, very soon. And I also get what you're saying is doing these dynamic meditations or different breath work or whatever. Can this be a gateway into potentially doing into deeper levels of spirituality? 100%. But be aware that this sensationalism, when you go into a breathwork workshop or you're doing dynamic meditation and or Kundalini yoga, and they're really throwing around these energies, and you get this sensation of it, be aware that your ego is going to attach to that sensation. And you may find sitting on a cushion for an hour, for a year, without getting any sort of huge benefits from it or any sort of sensationalism or any sensational experience or any, I don't know, enlightening experience, if you like. Okay. That's going to seem like a waste of time.
What's the reason that people with plant medicine or other things sometimes reduce this barrier between them and that
higher self or self with the big S? Is it that they finally allow some space, that they drop a filter, that they ask questions, that there's more silence? What is in it? Because I'm not only placing it on the medicine itself, but maybe something that it cultivates that is more receptive towards getting these insights or breakthroughs or openings in people.
Well, I relate it. Like, plant medicine, I said before, it's like getting a helicopter to the top of the mountain. Okay. Now, if you ask somebody, if you talk to a Sherpa who's climbed that mountain, once a week for the last 40 years of his life. Okay. If you asked him how to climb the mountain, he could tell you how to do that. The guy who's been dropped at the top of the helicopter, he can't tell you how to do that. Okay. So plant medicine, it seems to drop you there very, very fast. And but you can't integrate it. You can't explain it. You don't know how you actually got there. Okay. You don't know how it all happened. You had this experience and you went and saw, the grandmother or whatever it may be. And you had this amazing experience, but to be able to explain that, integrate it and make sense of it in your own psyche, in your own mind is nearly impossible. It's nearly impossible to do so.
You integrate it then? That's like important after an experience to integrate after plant medicine. And did you ever, you don't meditate because of that reason, but did you ever have a medicine or meditation experience like, oh, I have to write this down, or this is an insight, I want to write it down or not forget about it, or you never have that experience?
What actually happens to it is you I don't know, I'm trying to find the right words. You basically, you destroy the experience by putting words to it. It's a funny thing. And it's like, I had an experience a little while ago and I was a bit out of it. And my wife was like, my dad lives with us. He lives down the road and he's not down there. He lives on our property. And he's like, my wife's like, go see your dad. Like, you're just out of it. You can't go drive a car right now. You can't do anything. Go see your dad. And dad meditates for 8 to 10 hours a day. So, I get these concepts from him. So I went down and had a chat to him.
10 hours a day?
Yeah. Yeah. So he's deep in it. He's deep in it. 8 to 10 hours a day. He sort of floats in it. So, to have that sort of someone with that sort of spiritual commitment, which is very few in the world that have that sort of spiritual commitment. And he's done that for the last 20 years of his life. To have him so close is a huge benefit. But I went down there and tried to explain my experience to him. And he just said, stop trying to explain it. Just let it be. Just let it be. It is what it is. The more you put words to it, the more you filter it, or it's not even filter.
That's funny because that was not plant medicine, but I took like mushrooms or truffles and I went to sensory deprivation tank in the Netherlands for 2 hours, and then, started to meditate. And then after an hour, started asking deeper questions to myself and being open to the answers. And one of the things I wrote down, I still have it. I have like a list of 15 things, super lucid, is you don't always have to be able to explain something to understand it. And that's what I've written down 100%. On it, yeah.
And that's my experience. The minute you put words to it, it makes it dirty. It doesn't have the same clarity. I don't know how else to. It's hard to explain. I'm trying to explain. I'm actually doing what I'm trying.
Wasn't that super challenging when you grow up with these ultra spiritual parents, that it can become a spiritual competition almost? Like, oh my God, my dad has been meditating for 8-10 hours for 20 years.
Oh yeah, look, that can come into play. Yes, that can definitely, and that's definitely part of my spiritual ego that needs to be checked. But as a kid, not so much. To be honest, I thought my parents were fucking weird. And I went to a normal public school and did all that sort of stuff. And, the only difference I saw in me is I didn't eat meat. I didn't eat meat. And my parents didn't take a dogmatic approach towards their spirituality. They let me be who I wanted to be. And I went out there and I did the business thing and then realized that this is all bullshit, and then essentially returned home. And it was probably 7 years ago where I started to really sit down with Dad and ask him questions like, all right, cool. And you notice as well, it's like my dad obviously doing a lot of the guy's a pretty fucking chilled out, peaceful guy. Yeah. And there's this sort of,
he's a lunatic. He's a raging lunatic. Like that would be weird. After 20 years, like he's a raging alcoholic, smashing things. But when he's like quiet for 10 hours with meditation, he's like fine,
But there's elements to him which I think, oh, you don't see this in many men. You just don't see it in many human beings. What's this about? So I started to ask these questions. What's this about? How does this work? You know, I've worked my life to create what I think happy. I've got the fast M series BMW. I've got the house on the water. But I don't wake up happy in the morning. So you seem to be happy all the fucking time. What's it about? So I started to ask these questions, and that's how I returned home. But yeah, 100%. You've got to kind of check yourself, and it's, you know, and it's like, and people talk to you, oh, you're born with yogi parents and stuff like that. But in the spiritual community, yeah, you've got to really be. For me, I've got to humble myself and watch that my spiritual ego doesn't get out of hand, because I do feel that I understand a certain level of concepts because I was never taught anything else, if that makes sense. It's kind of how I was, you know, from.
Yeah, that's always a battle sometimes that I have of like, I choose to have this practice, but then in a way you have like, when you don't feel like it, you still do it. But on the part, it's like, yeah, am I forcing myself to do it? Is it the identity to always do it and always meditate? In a way, it's a commitment, but it's in a way you commitment that you put on yourself, right? It's not like I tell you to do it, but then that yoga sometimes can feel a bit like a yoke. I sometimes had this with practices or even sports that I was dragging myself to it. And then for me, because I'm a dynamic type, sometimes it can be good to see what I want to get out of this, more quiet, more rest, and maybe I can change a meditation technique. Or when I did sports, I could still do sports, but not the same thing, because I felt like I was just participating in masturbation. I must do this. And it felt compulsory, even though I could still choose to do it.
Okay. You want my opinion on it or
Sure, absolutely. Yeah. That's what I'm telling you and sharing you with. Yeah.
It's for me, the continual question I ask myself is to whom are these thoughts occurring? Now, I know when meditation for one thing, I know that, you know, and I believe, and if you've gone and seen 𝗦𝗂𝗧 harps on about this, but meditation is our natural state. Okay. It is our natural state. It's our natural way of being. Anything that's taking away from us, and meditation doesn't have to be sitting on the cushion. The ideal way to meditate is to meditate through life. You know what I mean? But to be able to get there, you know, it takes a lot of discipline and stuff like that. Okay, so 𝗦𝗂𝗧 harps on about this idea, but for me, it's just, you know, you've got to. Sorry, I've completely lost my train of thought here.
Doesn't matter. I still tons of talk and still like talk about. You come from the Advaita tradition, which is more when you look at the different ways how to attain enlightenment. It's one of the different ways how they can do it. It's more the intellectual way, like, you know, you ask a question not to get an answer, but as Mujil says, is like you ask a question to then get to a place where the nameless place, you know, the placeless place that they call it, right?
So where
is there also a way for maybe non-hadi, non-intellectual people who seek enlightenment or seek to go back to source of bhakti yoga, or that they serve, or that they use like the physical body? Because Advaita or like the Jnana yoga tradition is more like true knowledge, reaching like the source one. Do you see also the benefit of other ways of like yoga to reach the same kind 100%. Of perspective as Advaita or Jnana yoga?
100%. Yeah, I do. You know, I think bhakti, especially bhakti devotion, is extremely important. And I see people who go down that path and it's they call it devotion, but it's the devotion involves surrender. Okay. And so there are different ways to climb the mountain. Okay. Some might be through the church or through Christ. And, you know, there are many different ways. I don't think there's the one way to do it. But for me, yeah, self-inquiry is the way. And it's, potentially it's an intellectual process, and there's a lot of questioning going about. And this is what I was saying before is, you know, when you feel like you were saying that you feel like it's a chore to go out and do these things, meditation or whatever, you ask the question, to whom are these thoughts occurring? You know, and who is it that's thinking this? Is it the true nature? Is it the capital S self, or is it the ego? Is there something in the ego? And when you can identify that it's the ego, and you go, okay, cool, that's actually not the game I'm playing. Okay. I understand I'm a body and I'm a person, a personality and all that sort of stuff, but that's not the game I'm playing. I want to identify with something else. But I really do think, there is different forms of yoga, and there is different forms to be able to reach this.
No, but you talked about being dropped at the mountain. How were you dropped at the island that you're at? Tell me a bit about the intention or how you ended up there, because it's not the most natural place to end up unless you're like shipwrecked, I guess. Yeah.
No. I came here, Vanuatu is a small island in the South Pacific. So I came here, I was doing some charity work in 2014 or 15. I think 2015. It was just after they had a huge cyclone. So a cyclone came through here, Cyclone Pam. It was actually the largest cyclone to ever hit land, 440-kilometer winds. So it destroyed the place, completely flattened the place. We came here after to do some aid work and stuff like that. And the place was already getting back on its feet. And I fell in love with the people. I watched how the people helped the expat community, and I watched how the people were helping themselves. And these people who primarily live with thatched roofs or sheet iron houses had their whole villages destroyed and the whole way of living destroyed, but they were still walking around with smiles on their face, and they're still prepared to help and care for other people. So that was huge for me to see the people here. So I came here and I saw that, and we actually after we did our charity work, we went zip lining. Okay, so we went on this zip line through the jungle, and at the end of it, we're sitting there and we're looking at this beautiful ocean with a little island, classic tropical sort of turquoise ocean with the island out there. And I think, fuck, I could do this. I could really do this. And the thought left my mind. Okay, it was a very strong thought, but the thought left my mind. And then it came up, and we were looking. I just wanted out of the Western world. I was just sick of it. Okay. In hindsight, it's great. I was talking to my brother about this. He goes, you just had unbelievable hindsight on this. Are you psychic or something? I said, no. It's just. He goes, this is just the most intuitive thing that you've ever done is move to Vanuatu. Yeah, get out of the Western world. And it's because he's trying to get over here now, and he can't because of this one. But yeah, and we were looking for places. We looked for Asia. We looked at Asia. We're going to go do the Bali thing, but I didn't want to be another Bali entrepreneur. It didn't float my boat. I know a lot of people in Bali. We looked at that. We looked at other places in Asia. The big thing was, and I'll be honest with you, this is just very straightforward, is we've got 2 dogs. And we couldn't get our dogs into Asia. It was too risky.
It would be eaten.
potentially. Yeah. But we could get them into Vanuatu. So it was very easy to get them on the plane and get them in. So we made a decision. So we came over here and went through the processes of buying. We got residency through that. But it was just from a holiday. And the funny thing is we ended up buying the property. We bought a first property first on the water and did the classic sort of like holiday property on the water, which is a horrible. Don't anybody listening that's going to move to a tropical destination, because I feel there will be a lot after, once everything opens up. Don't buy on the water. It comes with its set of issues. Okay. Storms are a real thing. And when there's waves coming in your back door, they're scary, but it rusts everything and everything molds. But anyway, so we bought this property, and then we ended up buying the property just in front of the property where the zip lining is. So the zip lining's here, and you look out here, and we bought the property just in front with a hill with a better view, in my opinion. So we got a better view. So we bought that later. So that's how it came to be. It was, to be honest, it was just me wanting to get out of the Western world. And then I had some experiences in Vanuatu, and the biggest thing that drew me here is that there is natural beauty here. It's a stunningly beautiful place. There's 83 islands, and each island speaks a different language. It's the most diverse. Yeah. They've got over, I think it's over 120 languages. Okay. So they've got different languages in different islands, but there's 120 languages in a population of under 300,000 people. So it's the most diverse country with language. But the people just amazed me. Okay, I wanted to live somewhere tropical. I wanted to live somewhere, where we could surf and we could go to the beach. But the biggest thing, the people were so welcoming here.
And what is it about the Western world, about the people you didn't like, or the mindset? Or what especially were you like fed up with that you said like, I can't have more of this? Or
it was me. It wasn't other people. It was me. It was who it was making me. And being this entrepreneur and living this life of an entrepreneur, and even if you check my socials, it's Sam Innerpreneur now. Now I'm an innerpreneur. There's still this bullshit identity of I can't drop of being an entrepreneur. But it was this whole idea, and I noticed myself going through, I was making good money. So I was going through sports cars like a fucking rapper or something like that. It was ridiculous. You know what I mean? Like every 3 months I was buying the new Mercedes or the new BMW, buying Swiss watches, doing all the things that I thought would make me successful. And I just realized this is, and I said it in my bio and you read it out before, this is insatiable. When the fuck does this stop? Mm-hmm. I realized, the BMW didn't make me happy. The Mercedes didn't make me. The Ferrari sure the fuck ain't going to make me happy. You know what I mean? This is not going to make me happy. The Patek Philippe watch is not going to make me happy. Okay. It gives me a small little boost and a little bit of an endorphin jab for a while. And then, a week later, it's back to fucking normal. So where can I find peace in my life and where can I find joy? And then coming to Vanuatu and watching the people here who live on nothing. Average wage here, average wage in Vanuatu is $2 US a day. So they live with nothing, absolutely nothing. But there's family, there's community, there's village, there's abundance of fresh fruit and food. It's quite funny when you come to Vanuatu as a white person, there's a whole lot of black dudes walking around with big knives, right? Okay, and I'm just going to say it is what it is. You're like shit, but when you start to understand, okay, what these guys are doing with knives is they walk around with, because that's their way, and that's how they get their food. So they'll walk around with a knife and they go walk about here, okay, and if they need a pawpaw or a mango or a coconut, they've got a knife and they climb the tree and they cut it down and they eat. And this is just their way of being. And this is how they get about. And there's something unbelievably beautiful in that. And for me to come over here and spend time, and we kept coming back before we made the decision and see people who are living on $2 a day compared to me driving sports cars, and to know and to look at them and knowing myself, I'm not as happy as them. That was all right, cool. Something needs to change.
If people want to know more about your innopreneurism, meditation, all the other spiritual teachings, practices, insights you give, where can they find out more about you?
Okay, definitely. You can put all the social links. I'm sure you're going to put all the social links and stuff like that. But Facebook, Instagram, we're doing a program at the moment called Initiation Back to Self, which is an introduction to meditation. Basically, it's an introduction to non-dualistic concepts and Advaita principles, and mixed with meditation as well, and some quite powerful meditation techniques. And so we've got that, and then we've got another program after that, which is called Self, which dives into it. So we've got Initiation Back to Self, and then we've got Self, which is a more 10-week program, which dives more into the concepts, but it also works with universal principles and universal laws, and how you can use this, a lot of the stuff that we talked about on the call, but how you can use these principles to bring joy and happiness into your life.
Last question that I have: from everything that you learned of being part in the Western world, we have this interview now through Zoom and technology, with the direction humanity is going, and also the knowledge that you have of living in a more pure community that is more to the basics and more connected with each other. What is something we can learn from the direction that society is heading, the role of technology, and also maybe some important values that you see in the community where you live?
Okay. For me, it's about the unlearning. It's clear now that the more technology and the more consumerism they put into our lives, and this is the conversation we had with spiritual consumerism, it is just consumerism wrapped in a yellow robe. But the more consumerism they put into our life, the more things that they tell us that we need, okay, the further away we are getting from the joy and the happiness that is. So I think it's a devolution. It's a letting go. It's a shedding of things. And it's, I'm finding this process as it comes up. But at the moment, I'm sitting in my beautiful house I've actually got aircon on here because it's bloody hot in Vanuatu, but I've got aircon on here, and we've got an amazing solar system that does all this sort of stuff, and big batteries and all the things. And a very, and I've got all my books behind me, and I'm talking on a bloody MacBook on Mac. I don't know, $8,000 fucking Mac, and all this sort of stuff. So all these sort of things that I'm finding now, I don't need them. And it was very interesting. My recent trip up to the islands, just to watch that, it was very tempting. I actually came back and talked to my wife. I said, we could do this. We could go up there. I got given land up there. I went up there and I got given some land, and I got custom adoption. So I'm part of the family in this village, and we've got some beautiful land up there. And I said, I could do this. I could go up there and do this. But just seeing how people live and seeing how people who have less seem to have so much more, and their hearts are so much more open, and there's less wrinkles on their face, and it's just clear to me now, you know, being in Vanuatu and seeing these people that more does not equal happiness. And this is, and I'm not just talking about the material side of everything, but it's also the attachments on the mind as well. So the more that we can let go of material and different attachments and, you know, concepts that we think and ways of being and even information, I really think, you know,
this is also the thing that I have. If I would have a tool, and meditation is a tool for it, but if I could dim all the input my senses get, and I could just only keep what I want to keep, that I could make the impact that I want, and that I could actually manage my perception that way, I will be fine, and then I could integrate it. But all that new stuff, the metaverse, faster Wi-Fi, more AI, merge, it doesn't excite me at all. Like, it's already pretty overwhelming life right now with so much stimulation and distraction. I would rather just extract the things I want to keep, and all the rest, like, nice promo. If I want it, I'll ask for it, but not interested. You know, that's kind of my perspective right now.
100%. And it's funny. Like, I mean, it's, you know, my experience on the island just last week, I noticed I didn't touch my phone. I didn't do any of this sort of stuff, but and it took time, but over a week, my heart opened up to a certain point where it felt like on a daily basis, I was walking around in meditation. The connection, the conversations I was having with people, even though there was a language barrier there, the connections I was having with people were far beyond the connections I've had with some really close friends in you know, people I'd call close friends. I had connections with complete strangers because there was no distraction. We were sitting there on a beach, drinking a coconut, no Wi-Fi, no internet connection, having a conversation, having a connection. And I think that's important. I think that's really how the world needs to go. And I feel there will be these communities that pop up and do this sort of stuff. And I think this is the savior to humanity, is going back to basics. You know, we're not gonna get anywhere by adding more technology and doing this, and we're not gonna go through this. It's just not gonna happen.
Well, I don't want to end up in a society where you are this gated primal community where they still live like in the 20th century, and then it's like an example of, oh, look at these barbarians, how they're living, but at least they're happy. You know, what's that? Oh, that was a MacBook back in 2000. You know, like this kind of stuff. We'll see, man. I'm happy that I have you as a connection. I'm happy for people like you who give a realistic view of spirituality that's like grounded and is insightful. And yeah, man, maybe I'll visit you on the island one day, you know, and drink a coconut, and we'll also have a good chat, man. Thanks for being a guest on the podcast.
Perfect. Thank you for having me.
If you like this podcast, don't forget to subscribe and support our mission of freedom of speech. With increasing restrictions on fundamental freedoms, we believe that now, more than ever, is the time for you to be an online coach or consultant and become independent from the system. That's why we created the Client Closer Academy. Learn how to consistently enroll clients and join a community of fellow free thinkers who value personal responsibility, speaking their truth, and making an impact. Find out more at clientcloser.com/academy. Rant over.